Hey there, welcome to another edition of Rants. I am your host, Pete Pardo from Sea of Tranquility. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about a controversial topic, which, of course, I have loads of opinions on. Today, we're going to dive into the whole thing of this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So, just happened recently. We got Yes and Journey and ELO and a couple other acts that were inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I know for years I've just been kind of looking at this and saying, is this just a load of crap or what? Like how are these bands and artists getting inducted? And you've got so many great ones from the years who just keep getting ignored, and then you've got these inexplicable bands and artists who really aren't even rock and roll who get inducted, and it just makes no sense whatsoever. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to kind of talk about this. You go back over the years in recent memory. So, it took bands like, Kiss and Rush, Deep Purple, Yes, a million years to get in. And, but yet you've got like bands from like the 90s, like Pearl Jam, got in this year. Nirvana, Guns N' Roses, Green Day, for crying out loud. Bands who really haven't been around that long, and all right, maybe they sold a bunch of albums like in the 90s, whatever. But Green Day getting in over Rush or Kiss, in what reality does that make any sense whatsoever? And another thing, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to discredit this type of music or these bands, but I'm sorry, but NWA, Public Enemy, it's not fucking rock and roll. Okay, I don't care what you're gonna tell me, it's not. If you're gonna tell me that bands like that deserve to get in over Yes, before Yes, or Purple or Rush or Journey or whoever, bands that we're talking about bands that were huge in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, right? And they play rock and roll. That's what it's called, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, the criteria for who should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a band that had a long-lasting career, okay, that is considered influential on other bands that came after them, is one thing. Two, they had more than one or two, million-selling albums, and they were a top concert draw on the scene. And I'm not talking about playing clubs, okay, or touring once every 5 or 10 years. I'm talking about for a significant portion of time, they went out and sold out arenas and stadiums, things like that, okay? So for me, again, I'm a big fan, but, the fact that it took Deep Purple all these years to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a travesty. Look at the millions of albums they sold throughout the 70s, and even in the early 80s when they came back, Perfect Strangers, right? They were selling out arenas and stadiums for all those years. Influential to so many hard rock and metal bands. For crying out loud, Metallica got in before Deep Purple. Lars Ulrich inducted them. Okay, I was there live because, to him, he's like, there wouldn't have been a Metallica without Deep Purple. And I'm not, don't get me wrong, Metallica should get in at some point. They're already in, but they should. But, just based on, Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All, and, the Black Album. But did they need to get in, so quickly like that before, Iron Maiden? I can't understand this at all. How is Iron Maiden not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? This band has been selling millions of albums, 80s, 90s, 2000s, today. They have been selling out arenas for close to 4 decades. They still are now. So influential to so many of today's hard rock and metal bands. Okay? How are they not in? How is Judas Priest not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Okay? Again, all the same criteria. Influential. Million-selling albums. Lots of them that are looked at as some of the best heavy metal albums in history. Sold-out tours. They're still not in. The list goes on. Kansas. How is Kansas not in? Okay? Look at that string of albums that they released in the late 70s, early 80s. Okay? Huge hits. Dust in the Wind. Fight Fire with Fire. Carry On Wayward Son. Probably one of the best American progressive rock bands ever. Who else we got? Scorpions. I mean, huge band throughout the 80s and early 90s, folks. Still selling out tours everywhere. Maybe their albums aren't selling it that well anymore, but you know what? You look at, Blackout, Love at First Sting, all those albums in the 80s. Huge. You know? Can Joan Jett say that? Joan Jett got in, based on I Live Rock and Roll? Maybe one other song? What did Joan Jett really do to deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Not knocking her. I like Joan Jett. But, above some of these other bands, Styx. For crying out loud, how huge was Styx for so many years? All those hit tunes, songs that are still played on FM radio. I mean, you can name close to a dozen Styx songs that you're still hearing on FM radio. They're still going out and touring. Okay, look at all those albums: Grand Illusion, Pieces of Eight, Cornerstone, Kilroy, Paradise Theater. I mean, that's Hall of Fame worthy. Whether the critics loved them or not doesn't really matter. Okay. I mean, I can go on and on here. And another thing about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which kind of bugs the crap out of me, forget about who they choose. It's like when you get a band that wins the award, okay, but the hall is saying, but we're only going to induct those original members, okay, even if maybe that original lineup hasn't been together in 30 years, and they've gone on with a new lineup that's also toured and sold albums and all that kind of stuff, It's like, Kiss. The hall said basically, unless it's, with Ace Frehley and Peter Criss, we don't want you guys playing. And Paul and Gene were like, no, not going to do it. You're not going to force us into doing that. This is the band we have now with Eric and Tommy. Okay? And how about, I love them, but Blackmore, you couldn't show up last year to accept the award, It's Peter Cetera. I mean, he was, yes, I'm going to come. I'll sing a song or two with the band, whatever. And then he just doesn't even show up at all. I mean, can't you guys get over yourselves? It's like for one night, for a half hour, you can't put aside all your differences to give the fans what they want, who've been supporting you all these years, and just get along. I'll give Yes a lot of credit. I mean, I've seen clips on YouTube. I haven't seen the show yet. But it's like, they put aside their differences. You got 2 Yes camps going on right now. But they got on stage and played together, okay? As cool as it was to see Geddy Lee performing with Yes, and it was really cool. It's like, Billy Sherwood has been doing that. Billy Sherwood took over for the late Chris Squire. And, it would have been nice to see him up there as well. As far as Wakeman going on and on and on with all of his toilet humor during the speech and basically taking up all the time and not allowing Chris Squire's wife to say a few words, that was kind of not cool. But I could see Steve Howe was pretty pissed off about that afterwards. But, whatever. It is what it is. But, I don't know. It's like, you go through, I was just looking at the list of all the inductees over the years, and it's just like, just some of the bands that are, just like, who are some of these people? I just don't get it. The Dells. Who the hell is the Dells? You see Prince got in, Seeger, ZZ Top, Buddy Guy, Pretenders, great. They're totally, Miles Davis, I totally get. Grandmaster Flash, Jesus, what else we got here? Van Halen's in, Leonard Cohen, Madonna, Jeff Beck, of course, Metallica, Bobby Womack, ABBA, Genesis, a lot of these bands, they belong in, who the hell's Darlene Love? Who's Darlene Love? What else? The Blue Caps, the backup band for Gene Vincent. I could think of a lot, What else? The Famous Flames. Okay, it was James Brown's backup vocal group. Give me a break. Guns N' Roses. Okay, I'm sorry. One of the most overrated bands on the planet. Don't get me wrong. Their first album, classic. Regardless of whether I ever want to listen to it again. But it's like, what did they do to deserve to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before Rush, for fuck's sake? Okay? Or before Iron Maiden or Kansas. I mean, give me a break. They had one major album, a couple of lousy albums, and they've been broken up or operating with, various lineups and no showing concerts for 2 decades. I don't get it, What else we got here? Laura Nio, folk, all right, whatever. Hart got in, that was good to see. Donna Summer, nothing against Donna Summer. She was great at what she did. She's a disco star. Is rock and roll? I don't know. So anyway, I could go on and on about this for hours. But I just think that they need to streamline this thing a little bit better. What's really interesting is the last couple of years they've been doing this fan voting thing, and they've been listing, the nominations, and the fans get to vote, and they take that into account. And it's just amazing that when you see how the fans jump on these bands who've been waiting for so long, and for the most part, these bands don't give a shit if they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or not. They really don't. It's more for us, right? I mean, I still think it'd be cool to see like King Crimson in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? Are they a band totally deserving? I mean, it's debatable. King Crimson never sold millions of albums. They never were a big headline touring band or whatever, but influential? Hell yeah. Would there be a progressive rock, subgenre without King Crimson or even the Moody Blues? Both of those bands should be considered. But, it's still cool when, you get to see the fans rally behind and say, hey, this band deserves to be in. But what really pisses me off is when, they do these fan voting things and the Rock takes a look at that or the Hall takes a look at that and they say, okay, this happened a couple years ago. Deep Purple and Yes were like right up there in the top 5 of the fan voting, and then they didn't nominate them in anyway. They had to wait another year. So it's like, come on. Anyway, so with that, that's my little rant of the day. Is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a load of crap and a piece of shit and totally irrelevant? Yeah, you be the judge. I personally still think it's cool when bands that we love get in, but it's just this frustrating, waiting and waiting and waiting for them not to get the recognition they deserve. So, here's for over the next couple of years. Maiden has got to get it. They're high up on my list. I want to see Maiden in. I want to see Priest in, Scorpions, Styx, and Kansas. I'd love to see King Crimson in. There's some other prog bands out there. The Moody Blues deserve to get in. I'd love to see Uriah Heep in. That's probably never going to happen. But, it's like, I think, most of the mainstream stuff has already gotten in, but there's a lot of, like, fringe bands that are still sitting out there that still we'd love to see. I'd love to see Ronnie James Dio get his due. We'll see. So, anyway, with that, I will leave you till next time. We got more rants coming up. We got some great new releases coming up over the course of the next week. I'm going to talk a lot about this relatively soon, so stay tuned. Till then, have a good one. We'll talk to you next time.